Hi, I'm Michelle Scally-Doylney with the International Feng Shui Guild, IFSG, and I'm here today with Maureen and Chelsea. And if each of you could introduce yourselves, tell us a little bit about yourself, that would be fantastic.
Well, thank you, Michelle. I'm Maureen Calamia, and I am founder of the Luminous Spaces School, which is an online school, and I'm here in New York.
Great.
I'm Chelsea Piazza-Wilsey. I went through Maureen's program and I'm a feng shui consultant now. I also have a corporate job and I'm an author and started a coaching business.
Fantastic. Thanks for being here today. Maureen, if you could give us the details of your school, in person, online, tradition that you teach in, that would be fantastic.
Sure. So the Luminous Spaces School, I started back in 2015, and it is an online school. I taught in person on Long Island for 5 years at an interior design school, and then decided that I wanted to go off and do something on my own. So we have students from nearly every continent in the world, and we're going on, I think it's 12 years now. It is primarily BTB. I've trained in BTB or Black Sect feng shui, as well as classical. But my school is really BTB focused with part of the classical teaching that I received, which I really loved, is the land form feng shui, which really gets to the heart of the landscape and how the land informs the feng shui of our homes. So that is really an important thing to me. So it is an online school. It is ongoing. People can join at any time throughout the year.
Excellent. And could you tell us a little bit more detail about your program, especially how to have that connection, how to have that personalized part with online teaching?
Yeah, I know how online can be a little bit disjointed and feeling disconnected from the teacher and from the rest of the community. So I do have a private Facebook group for my students and graduates. We do a lot of interaction there, and I also do monthly Q&A sessions on Zoom. So anytime I have a current student or even a graduate that wants to come back and share a question about a project they're working on or their own home, but mostly my current students come on to ask questions about the content and drill a little bit deeper into that. And of course, we'll share floor plans, we'll share new cures perhaps. So that really kind of cements the, one-to-one connection. Plus, all of my students also work with me personally on two case studies. One is going to be residential and one non-residential, so a business, a nonprofit, or anything non-residential. I like people to, even though they kind of know what kind of feng shui they're going to do to practice, I do highly recommend getting two different experiences like that because you just never know where you might go. And I think it really helps people understand how, the differences between the two types of consultations. And also, all of my professionally certified students gets a private consultation with me on their home. So this way they could see what a Zoom kind of, a virtual consultation is like, so they can incorporate that into their practice because that is the way, obviously, things have been moving so much nowadays. Even though I do in-person consultations, most of my work is actually international. So I think that's really important. So I really get to know every student at a very deep level. And that's what I think is so much fun about doing this school.
Oh, thank you. So I'm hearing that with the community part, this is for students, for people who are in the program, but it's ongoing. Once you've taken the program, you can keep in that community and keep connected.
Yeah. And, as I've recognized that this is actually kind of like an ongoing mentoring program because, like I said, I'll have students that come back 5 years later and they'll say, I'm a little stumped. I have this project. Let's look at it together. And anyone who's on the Q&A session can join in and we can have a real interactive dialogue. So yes, it is a really wonderful way to keep that conversation going and that connection. And I just want to say another thing that I almost forgot. I have two different tracks in the school. One is the professional certification track, and one is what I call the foundations track, because I recognize that not everyone who takes feng shui wants to become certified. They don't really want to do this in their career, but they want to learn for their own spiritual growth, for working with their own home and maybe, a loved one. So I too do have those two different tracks as well.
Great. So I think that's important for people to know that this is feng shui is something you can pursue with certification as a career or for work, or there's a path for personal interest.
Yeah.
Two different ways. Great. So just wondering if you, Maureen, have a tidbit or a story about using feng shui that you'd like to share. Just some example in your own life or through your school.
Well, something in general, I really don't have a particular story, but something that really came to me very early on in my feng shui training when I was a student was the fact that our environment is a mirror reflection of what's going on inside of us. And I am somebody who's really passionate about psychology and spiritual development. So when I learned this, it just really helped me understand how I can uncover those kind of shadow aspects of myself or things that I don't normally see by looking at the outer. So looking at the land, looking at my home. Often there's this direct connection to something that I'm either blocking in my life or something that a lesson that I need to learn to move forward in my spiritual growth. And I think it is such a wonderful way to help people because we all have those kind of blinders on in our own unconscious realm, and being able to use feng shui to see that and work through that is lovely. And feng shui also not only helps us see the mirror, but helps us put a correction in, say, or a remedy in to help us move through that, to grow through that experience.
Wonderful. Could you tell us about you've got a lot of wonderful things that you're doing, your school, podcast, the Enchanted Earth book, and it sounds like you have a new book in the works. Anything you'd like to share?
Yeah. So something that I first about my school, it is feng shui is the foundation of my school, and that's what I started 12 years ago. But over the years, my interests have really kind of moved to other areas, all with the foundation of nature and our connection to nature as the main foundation. So one is completely opposite. It's, in a way, it is evidence-based design, showing how nature is so important in our environments to support like a healthy human. So that's biophilic design. And then I also teach on the other end of the spectrum, dowsing and earth energy healing. And that program is called Divining the Earth Feminine. And I'm actually starting a new class in September. I do have it available ongoing as self-study, but we get together and do a live class together over the series of a few months. So that's one thing. And then, yes, I published two books. One is Creating Luminous Spaces in 2018, and that is really about feng shui and the five elements at a very deep level and how the elements help us connect to the natural world. My next book, as you mentioned, is The Enchanted Earth, and that book is all about these amazing stories from people I've interviewed about their kind of mystical, enchanted stories of nature. And my podcast is basically the same thing where I interview people about these beautiful mystical stories. And yeah, my next book is, of course, kind of along the same veins, but is really more about dowsing and nature connection in that way, and the consciousness shift that we're living through right now.
Fantastic. Thank you, Maureen. And I want to get to Chelsea next. Chelsea, if you've studied with Maureen and been through the program, and anything that you'd like to share about how you found Maureen's school, made your decision, your experience would be wonderful.
Yeah, so I found Maureen's school a year ago, I think a year ago this month. But I had been going through breast cancer treatment. I had been diagnosed in 2024, and part of my recovery and process of getting through treatment and then figuring out what I wanted my life to be afterwards, um, I naturally started redoing my space and renovating my kitchen, even though I was doing chemo and way too tired and sick to be doing that. And at the very end, I think before one of my last treatments, I decided I was always interested in feng shui from years prior, but at the time there weren't any good options for me to study the school of feng shui. I think the only school I found at the time was on the opposite coast, and I'm in New York. And I couldn't afford it anyway. It was in person. There was nothing online at that time. Um, and then it sort of found me again as I was going through this spiritual awakening along with my cancer journey. And I started researching again on my own, and I actually feng shuied my entire house ahead of my last surgery so that when I was done with my treatment, it was like I was walking into a new life of what I wanted my house to look like for supporting my new life. And that's when I decided I think I really want to get certified and go to school for this. So I actually went on the International Feng Shui Guild's website, and searched your extensive catalog of classes, and schools. And I gravitated to Maureen's because the word luminous just felt so positive and what I was craving in my life at that time, which was such a dark period. And I gravitated to her emphasis on nature, and everything that I had studied on my own about feng shui was really about the interior of the home and not about, and Maureen focuses greatly on bringing nature into your home and focusing on the land that your home sits on. And that felt really important to me at that time. I had a stream that went right alongside my house that at times would be raging, and um, that stream subconsciously always kind of bothered me and worried me all the time. So the nature component really appealed to me. But I'm also a mom of two kids. I was going through treatment. I have a very big job, and I really needed self-study. So that format worked really well for me because I could find the pockets of time in my week to dedicate to working on the class. Maureen and Sue are accessible all the time. I talk to them through email every week. You also meet with Maureen in person or through virtual, like you have a whole meeting before you even start the self-study. Um, and I loved every minute of it. And doing self-study allowed me to also pause where I needed to pause, or maybe go back to something Maureen said that I was like, wait, that was interesting. And I wanted to take notes or whatever. So for me, the format was perfect. And then getting to work on an actual two different case studies with Maureen was a really collaborative experience, and I got to ask so many questions. And then she did my new home that I moved into just recently, which was thrilling. And it was very cool to see how Maureen approaches the work and does in her practice. and I got so much out of it. It just really sort of helped me on my quest to starting my new life and came to me at the right time.
Yeah, as we all know, being in this energy world profession, things really do flow.
Yes.
And, thank you for sharing about your journey, Chelsea. And I'm so glad that this path appeared in your life when it sounds like an incredibly difficult time and such a strong way forward.
Yeah, and for me it was about when you get diagnosed with cancer, you lose a lot of control over your life because you're sort of surrendering to the fight and to the medical world. And Feng Shui gave me like a way to sort of take some of that back and because then I could actually control the environment that I was in all the time, um, to the way that I wanted it to support me. So that was the other, I think, important parallel at the time that Feng Shui was able to provide for me.
Yeah, something we can work with.
Yeah.
Well, thank you both. And Maureen, I don't know if there's any last thing you'd like to say before we wrap up for today.
Um, I think if anyone is interested, they would like to reach out to me. They could book a chat with me on Zoom and ask me any questions they have. I'm very available and love to hear other people's kind of journeys and where they are. I welcome that.
Thank you both so much for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.